Sometimes strategies and supply chains are so sophisticated, they're great for an MBA paper, but absolutely nobody understands it. And if you're going to work in the supply chain, remember, you can have this great plan, but the people that have to execute it for you are much layered down, and they could care less about your strategy. They want to go home at 5 o'clock, or they want to get out of that cold warehouse, or they want to get off the road. So simplicity. The second thing is listening. Now, what does that have to do with supply chain? Listening is a lost skill. I got to tell you another true story. When I was a 3-star general, my last command was in Germany. I was sent over there to bring all the stuff home that we've been planning over there to fight the Soviet Union. If somebody would have told me the Soviet Union was going to go away in 6 months, I'd have said, you're crazy. It took the Roman Empire at least a couple hundred years. Never dreamed that the Soviet Union would fall apart. But we had billions and billions of dollars of stuff over there. We were going to fly soldiers in, falling on this equipment, which is in warehouses, humidified warehouses, and then go and attack in East Germany. And so I was told, okay, you're going to finish out your career. How would you like to be the commanding general? I said, great, another chance to be a CEO. I went over to Germany, and I was going to bring everything home. Well, in the military, your spouse is heavily involved with everything you do. My wife actually joined me at the end of the first Gulf War. Everybody came home. I stayed there, and they gave me 6,000 fresh troops to bring everything home. We had, 520,000 troops, 100,000 containers, 2,000 tanks. All this stuff had to be cleaned in the desert and brought home. So I told Schwarzkopf and Powell, hey, I was the first guy here. I'm ready to go home. They said, no, you're going to stay. We'll let your wife come over. My wife came over, ran the USO and the Red Cross. The reason I'm telling you this story, following that assignment, we went on to Germany. My aide came in to me one day and said, hey, your wife would like you to take a speech for her. Now, I'm not comparing you to that audience, but it was the graduating class from kindergarten to first grade. Now, the little girls were all dressed up with ribbons in their hair. The boys had bow ties on. And it was in Belgium in a foreign international school where the U.S. military personnel were sending their children. And I said, what in the world am I going to say to these kids? So I stood on the stage and I said, boys and girls, I'm here to tell you what a wonderful job your parents are doing serving their nation and country and why you're in a foreign school. And your job, sort of what you're stuck with for the next few minutes, is to sit there and listen. And this little girl in the front row, this is a true story, put up her hand and said, Mr. General, if we finish before you do, can we go home? 5-year-olds have a way of really winning. I always remember that because listening is a skill set in leadership that's forgotten. Listening to your subordinates, that's where all the ideas are. Getting out into the warehouses. Now, the older people here in my generation know that. You can't run an operation from your office. You have to get out in the field. You have to understand what's going on. And you have to listen to their ideas. When I first joined Sears, I required all my people to go work in the warehouses or work in the store. They would never let me handle the cash register because I used to screw it up so bad. But we used to go and work out there. And I used to go to a warehouse in Indiana, Pennsylvania. That's where my mother-in-law was from. And I would combine vacation with spending a couple days in the store. This little old lady in the back house had no idea who I was. I would come out, she could offload a whole truck, and I'd be working on 2 boxes. And she said to me one day, at that time we had no scannability. We were scanning like 5% of our product. She said, customers come in, they buy something at Sears, and it comes in on a truck, but it's mixed up with all this other crap. She said, if they would just color code the labels are white, if they were color coded yellow, I would know that was a customer order. I would take it off right away, put it out in the front so the customer could come and pick it up. And if they were scannable, they'd be green, and if they weren't scannable, they'd be white, and we made up our own labels. Of course, we got to 99% scannability, but at that time, that's all we had. I came back to the headquarters, grabbed one of the smart guys, and said, can you give me this? No problem. That increased the efficiency of the retail stores almost overnight until we could get the IT solution of bar scanning in there. Why am I telling you? This little old lady, she's been doing it for 20 years at this store. She knew every problem. We used to deliver, everybody in the United States has to have one. Sears sells 500,000 riding mowers a year. 500,000 a year. You know how we ship them from the warehouses? 3 high. Why? Forklift. Drive the truck in here. You want to cube out the truck, right? When you go to the back of the mall, You got a couple of little old ladies, a couple of little guys, some young kids out there trying to move this couple thousand things. How do they get it off? They slide it off and damage it. How do you find that out? By going to the store. So then we shipped them too high. We also gave them some forklift type operation. So listening to your people in the discipline of the supply chain, you must do that. The third thing I want to talk about is communications. It is probably, I know history is going to say that the internet is the greatest instrument ever to come to mankind. When you can sit in your office, send an email to Japan on your schedule, allowing them to answer back on their schedule, as long as you keep it short. You know, these emails are getting so long, it's impossible to read them. I won't accept an email that's longer than the front and back of a 3x5 card. I'm still trying to find somebody to teach me how to electrocute you if you go too far. What I really want to do is electrocute if you push the button that sends the email to 400 people. Okay, so we're inundating ourselves with information, but I know the internet is going to go down in history as the greatest instrument that shrunk the world. Okay, but communicating has to be done simply. Long, detailed messages, no one reads them. And, you know, I can get 30, 40 emails a day. When I was putting in about 90 hours a week last year, but now I'm semi-retired. I'm at 45, which is very enjoyable. But with 90 hours a week, I was getting 30, 40, 50, 100 emails a day with no trouble at all. Short and concise. Now, it's funny, here at the university, you're going to do a paper, nothing against professors, they're going to tell you it has to be 10 pages long. Now, when I went to Penn State, we had typewriters. You younger people don't understand. There was Pica type and Elite type. Pica type was real big, Elite type was real small, so I always had a Pica typewriter, which would be the big thing. And then the margins, used to measure the margins. It's supposed to be an inch, I'd make mine 1.5 inches. Then between sentences, it's supposed to be 1.5, I'd make it 2.5. Okay? So a 10-page paper, I'd spread it out, right? Point is, then you leave the university when you don't have to do that anymore, and you want to give your boss a 10, 20-page report. No one's going to read it. Even if they tell you they're going to read it, trust me, they're not going to read it. Short and concise. That's what we have to do. You have to be able to communicate. And definitely, you've got to communicate from here to here. I don't know, anybody here served in the military? When I was in the military, before my battalion command, that's for about 3,000 troops, I was working congressional liaison. I was working on the Hill as a lobbyist for the military. We would take congressmen and senators out to our various facilities to see our equipment, the tanks and all that stuff. And so, you know, my vocabulary was pretty good, and I was dealing with very educated people. I went into my command, and I'll never forget, the first week, this young man had gotten in trouble. And in the military, you know, you don't show up for work to get what they call an Article 15. And he was standing before me, and he was arguing his case, and I said, look, you've been exonerated. And he looked at me and said, hey, I told you I didn't do it. I was there. And I realized he had no idea what I was saying to him. You've got to communicate in the supply chain to the level you're dealing with. I'm not saying talking down or feel like you're talking down to people. I'm saying you've got to be on the same level. When I go into a facility at Sears or Genco, I go in the night shift. Bring in a couple of pizzas to the night shift. They will tell you everything that's going wrong in that facility. They just tell you, okay? Everybody wants to go to the day shift. Yeah, go to the night shift. Go to those people to work from 12 at midnight to 5 in the morning or something. Communicate. Learn how to communicate with people. I can't overemphasize it. And keep it short. Keep it short. You know, I was on a school bus the other day. It was my turn to ride the bus with my granddaughter. And it was amazing. These kids were texting each other on the same bus. Instead of talking, I couldn't believe it. These were little kids. I mean, we're talking about, you know, 10, 11, 12. I mean, it's just amazing. And I'm wondering, what are all these? I thought they were doing homework or something. And I realized the bus driver said, no, they're just text messaging each other. And I thought to myself, and they were long, but some of them were short. And short ones I could live with. Short and concise. All right. The next thing in the supply chain is adversity. If you can't handle adversity, go see your faculty advisor and get into a different program real fast. If you have a good day in the supply chain, if you have a good hour, you've had a good day. Everything that can go wrong, known to man, can happen in the supply chain. And then if that doesn't happen, the weather will do it to you. As the panel is going to talk to you in a few minutes, operation centers, snowstorms, anything that can go wrong can go wrong. Somebody will advertise something and not tell you, and it's on the front page of a $1 million advertisement, and no one told you to get the stuff from the warehouse to the stores. Okay? You've got to learn to handle adversity. Anybody can handle the good times. There's a difference between leaders and managers. I am convinced leaders are people that do all these things I'm talking about. The manager just goes with the wave. And there are good managers, but you want to be a leader. In the supply chain, you have to lead people. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to handle adversity. Why? Something's going to go wrong. If you get a chance, talk to some of these people that are here for the job fair that have been around the supply chain. Stuff happens you would never dream of. Okay? In communicating and handling adversity, you can solve problems as they occur. You can't prevent everything. You just can't prevent everything. But you got to be prepared to handle adversity. Now, if you keep it simple, learn to listen, learn how to communicate, handle adversity, then there's one final factor. You got to have fun. Your life is too short. Whether you work 40-hour weeks or 60-hour weeks, you're going to spend more time at work than you do with your family. You throw in the amount of time you sleep, the amount of time you have to go to certain events, and then you set aside, you've got to have fun. I always made the supply chain, any place I've ever worked, even in the military, a fun operation. We would take adversity and try to see what can we turn around and make it a positive thing. You've got to enjoy life. The supply chain will be exciting for you, and I'm delighted that to be here this week to talk to you at this conference. Now, they asked me to keep my comments short. I just wanted to cover those 5 points with you. I will tell you, I started out my career from Penn State in trade and transportation. Went into the Army as an infantry officer. Got to patrol the Berlin Wall as a young lieutenant. Handled about 4 or 5 escapes, which was pretty exciting for a young lieutenant. I think some here probably don't know about the Berlin Wall, but there was a wall around Berlin, and people were trying to get out. And then I decided, okay, I went off to Vietnam, and I was infantry transportation combined. And then I went back to Vietnam. I went back to the infantry, the customer. The supply chain always has to focus on the customer, and your customer changes. Same thing in the military. And then following that, I was fortunate enough to get involved and become a general officer, and then, of course, the first Gulf War. But in my career, the most exciting times, even though I was in combat in Vietnam, had the Berlin Wall, has been in the supply chain. Because if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Period. And the excitement is being able to attack it and correct it. And leadership is absolutely necessary. Leadership of the supply chain will make the difference between you being successful or not being successful. You got a great education here at Syracuse. You got great courses, great professors. And as much as you can, you need to be studying the leadership aspects of all this.